Good day, everyone. My name is Danny Pankratz. I'm the Director of ASUG here at, Director of Education, rather, here at ASUG, and that stands for America's SAP Users Group. If you're new to ASUG or just finding out about who we are in our OneSource community. I'm joined today by our presenters on the webcast, as well as my colleague Maureen McInerney, and just want to take a moment to welcome you to this webcast from our OneSource ASUG community for SAP Business One. Business One's been a part of ASUG, America's SAP Users Group. We've had a community for the past number of years, and we've had a yearly summit here in North America that became a conference, and is now last year became the next iteration, the Biz One conference, which you can learn more about at biz.one. But as part of that, we here at ASUG have rededicated ourselves to year-round community. And that's what you're seeing as OneSource, which we think is a great complement to that year-round or that annual conference, the Biz One conference, is that year-round community. And on the slide that you're seeing a quick overview about what we do. And today's webcast is a really big part of that first item, that year-round curriculum. We heard from feedback from research with SAP Business One customers throughout last year that they really wanted to have an extended conversation on certain hot topics. So this is part of our integration theme for February of this year, and we've already explored that integration theme from a couple of aspects. One of today's presenters is actually the number 2 thing on our slide, Richard Duffy, who's been an SAP Business One evangelist for a while, worked for SAP for a while, and he's joined ASUG to help us out as our dedicated subject matter expert. So Richard did a webcast on integration a couple of weeks ago. We had a customer story after that. Last week, SAP gave us some great insights and overview of integration options, and that partner voice is a really big part of what we're looking to do as well. Customers told us they wanted to hear about what partner options were available to them when maybe the out-of-the-box software doesn't have quite everything that they need, or you're really looking to innovate your business or to try new things with Business One. We want to be a platform to help share with that. So we're very excited today to welcome Alluvia to offer that partner perspective and that partner voice as part of our integration curriculum for February. I just want to, Maureen, if you can go back one slide, I just want to call out a couple other things. We do have a number of other resources available to you. So if you want to learn about what we're doing, if this is the first you're hearing about OneSource, I encourage you to reach out to us at businessone@asug.com. And then I want to put in a quick plug for next week as we turn the calendar over to March. We'll be shifting into a focus on finance and financial operations around general ledger, accounts payable and receivable, and some other financial topics throughout March. We have a number of webcasts on the calendar already for that. So again, reach out to us if you're interested in participating or learning more and being a part of our year-round community for SAP Business One customers and professionals. One more quick note is you do have the opportunity to ask questions throughout today's webcast. You should be seeing a Q&A area. Maureen's kind of keeping an eye on that, and our presenters will be able to answer questions as they're comfortable throughout the session, or we'll save questions for the end. This session is also being recorded, so it'll be available on demand if you want to recommend it to some colleagues or come back and review something later on as well. And the slides will be available on our OneSource community forum as well. So with that, I want to just once again recognize and thank our presenters today, Joel from Alluvia, and then Richard, who I mentioned is doing a lot of stuff for us for our OneSource community. So Joel and Richard, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Danny. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Joel Kalish, CEO of Alluvia. Thanks for joining, and thank you, Richard, as well, for sharing and staying up late night to share your stories. So we'll start with a quick introduction, and I'll discuss the agenda first. So we'll start with a quick introduction, and then we're going to share 2 case studies of 2 actual customers. The first case study is going to be presented by Richard, and it's about a company, Provincial Distributors. And then I'm going to take over and discuss a Safari Ltd. And then we're going to jump into a live demo of Shopify to SAP Business One. So these 3 case studies will actually be 3 different systems. We're going to start with Richard Duffy. The Provincial Distributors is a WooCommerce connection to SAP Business One. Then we're going to move over to Safari, which actually had a Salesforce integration to SAP Business One, and then we're going to talk about Shopify to Business One. And then we're going to have some time at the end to share some Q&A questions and answers. So before we actually jump into the case studies, I just want to start a quick overview of what Alluvia is all about and why we started and why we actually developed this application. So I actually started many years ago. I was a SAP B1 reseller, and we sold Business One licenses and implementations. And we always had all of our customers always kept asking us for solutions for their integration problems. And while there are many available solutions in the market, but a lot of them are very costly and complex, and it will be a one-off situation where a specific provider will do a customized integration process for a specific customer. And it basically costed thousands and thousands of dollars. It took months and months of development time. So we were actually looking for a solution for our customers, and we decided to start Alluvia to improve that integration process and be able to solve our customers' challenges. So now we have been doing that for many years, and about 18 months ago, we stopped doing SAP B1 projects, and we started focusing on Alluvia as an integration platform. So what is Alluvia and how does it work? So it's a new approach to integration. It's not anymore a tool-based that you buy a certain tool and you then take that tool and customize it to your process. What we did is we developed a cloud-based subscription model application where we are able to connect to all popular and common e-commerce platforms and at the same time connect to SAP Business One, and all maintenance and monitoring and daily day-to-day operations is being done on the cloud, and in most cases it actually works behind the scenes without any user involvement. And the way we deliver that is through a pre-configured list of templates and a drag-and-drop wizard, which basically allows you to choose whatever integration scenario you want to accomplish. You can choose one of the existing templates, which has a preset list of rules and configuration options for a particular environment, and all you need to do is just modify the mapping to fit your specific needs, and that's taken care of the drag-and-drop mapping wizard. And with that, we're able to do integration projects literally in minutes rather than months, and in some cases many months. And with that, we developed integrations to some popular e-commerce platforms, CRM systems. We are actually now in the process of releasing an EDI component that's going to be a fully managed EDI capability, as well as custom file integration, which allows you to do any structured file format, whether it's Excel, CSV, flat file, and so on and so forth. So we currently have available, as you can see on this slide, we currently have integrations available to all these systems that you see on the screen. So we have Amazon, eBay, Etsy, Walmart, and Jet.com, which is like a kind of a marketplace integration. And if you have an e-commerce platform like a shopping cart, we integrate with Shopify, WooCommerce, Magento, and BigCommerce. And now we have Salesforce as a CRM. And as mentioned, we are just in the process of releasing an EDI component as well as custom files. So I just want to point out one quick note that while today's demonstrations are going to be focused on WooCommerce, Salesforce, and Shopify, but as you can see here on the slide, we are actually equally easy and flexible to accommodate all of those listed on the screen right here. So with that, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Richard. He's going to start the case study for Provincial Foods, and I'm going to pick up later.
Great, thank you very much, Joel. And just to provide some background on the, if you like, on the segue. As Danny pointed out to you, I do a lot of work with ASUG as the SAP Business One subject matter expert. But I also have my own organization where one of the things that I do is build websites for customers, and actually built many websites for many different SAP Business One partners. So I'm going to take off, if you like, my ASUG hat for a minute and put on my customer hat and talk a little bit about what our experience was with using Alluvia as a customer. So Provincial Distributors is a regional food service provider, as we call them here in Australia, and they're located in southeast Queensland. And what Provincial Distributors do is they have a full range of grocery products, as well as frozen and a number of refrigerated fresh foods that they provide to restaurants, cafes, cafeterias, and so on and so forth. So they had a very static website. It had no ability to transact with consumers, although, as Joel pointed out, they went down a path that many Business One customers do, is they had a bespoke integration built for them to allow them to do business-to-business transactions. So they had that done, and that was a complete bespoke platform from the web server right the way through to the integration to Business One. But no ability to transact with the consumers in a B2C scenario, and the challenge for them was that competitors have actually moved into the B2C space, and as many of you as small and mid-sized businesses will know, one of the things that happens is if you have strong competitors and they move into a new area of the market, assuming, of course, that they're not crazy and you believe it's a good area as well, you've got to be able to respond very, very quickly. So they needed a way to be able to do that, to be able to launch quickly and not necessarily generate extra integration workload. So when I'm talking about the integration workload, I'm really talking about people actually having to sit there and rekey transactions manually and manage the website and do all of those kinds of things. So because like most small and mid-sized businesses, running lean is always a good thing, and in particular in the food service industry where margins are tight at the best of times, it's really, really important to make sure that they move into this new space, this B2C space, without increasing their cost base. So that was kind of the scenario they had. So they came to us, and I've been building websites on top of WordPress for many, many years now. And so, we used WordPress, and we decided to use WooCommerce as the shopping cart platform for the site. And so we originally started utilizing some just standard WooCommerce plugins that allowed us to do, if you like, batch mode integration, uploading, downloading product information. And then when it came time to get data in and out of SAP Business One, getting data out, well, we would just use standard exports, and getting data back in, we would use the dreaded SAP data transfer workbench. I say dreaded not in a bad way, but those of you who have worked with DTW, which is probably almost every Business One customer, you'll know it's good for some things, but it's not necessarily the answer to every problem. And again, why wasn't it the answer to every problem? Because we're working in batch mode. The process was slow, the application was clunky, and it was really quite prone to failure. So I'd been looking around for an alternative, and as Joel said, there are lots of solutions out there that offer you integration into SAP Business One, but you buy a product, and then you've got to basically build all of the components yourself, and they provide one piece, which is the plug-in to Business One using the DI API. Why Alluvia really grabbed my attention was that Alluvia offered these pre-built integration scenarios. but at the same time we had easy customization that enabled us to meet the client's needs. And as you can see, this is factually correct. We were able to deliver a 90% plug-and-play solution. The integration was completed in 5 days, and I know Joel won't mind me pointing this out. Really, Joel and his team had no intentions of expanding out into Australia quite at this point in time. But because of the flexibility of their platform, they were able to actually complete the localization and meet all the requirements we had to plug into the Australian and New Zealand localization for SAP Business One and get that done in basically a week. So it was a really, really nice, seamless, easy solution, and it was cost effective as well. So that provided us with a complete solution. As a matter of fact, we were able to get this piece of it done ahead of when the client was actually ready. So we had a time frame, and we said we've got this much time to get the integration done. Well, thanks to Alluvia, we actually have been able to deliver the integration a heck of a lot sooner, a heck of a lot faster, and with less challenge. And you'll see when Joel does his demonstration of the Alluvia platform, you'll see some of the reasons why, because of the flexibility, the ease of use that Alluvia provides. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Joel. And of course, if anybody's got any questions along the way or at the end of the session, I'll still be here if you want to ask any questions about our experience as a customer working with Alluvia. More than happy to answer any of those specific questions that you may have. So back to you, Joel.
Thank you, Richard. So now we're going to move on to the next slide, which is a case study of SAP Business One to Salesforce. And that's for a company, Safari Ltd. So Safari is a customer that a company, a manufacturer and distributor of toys. And one of their hallmarks is lifelike replicas and in some cases handmade and hand-painted toys that represent real-life animals and the animal kingdom. And they've been using SAP Business One for a while. And so we're going to share some of their challenges and solutions they were looking for and how we were able to solve meet all the clients' goals. So Safari actually is one of the larger SAP B1 users. They're a large company, and they actually switched to HANA a while ago because of the database performance. And they have hundreds of thousands of rows and records for some of the items. For example, the price list tables are hundreds of thousands of rows, and they needed to integrate those. A typical order at Safari can be 200 to 300 line items, so they are a very line item heavy company. And they were using Salesforce for all their sales reps, and because they have some unique requirements, and they're a larger company, as any large company might have, they customize their Salesforce organization pretty heavily. Including they added a large number of custom objects in Salesforce, as well as some of the standard objects, which is like a typical Salesforce quote or an account object or contact, has a lot of customized processes behind all those, many approval levels, and so on and so forth. So they're pretty customized Salesforce instance. And so when they started using Salesforce for the sales rep, they actually had a couple of goals in mind. And they were looking for a solution where the salespeople would use Salesforce, but they will not even have access to SAP Business One. And vice versa, the back office teams, such as the logistics, the warehouse, and customer care, would not have access to Salesforce at all. They'll do all the processing in SAP B1. So they'll save on Salesforce and SAP licensing. So only those users that are required to have either Salesforce or SAP would have those licenses. And because of that nature, they needed a solution that will allow them for the data to flow back and forth immediately or near real time. So as soon as a quotation, for example, will be entered in Salesforce, it needs immediately to be submitted to SAP. As soon as the order gets delivered and so on and so forth, they'll want to have that order details and invoice details back to Salesforce so the reps can share the data with their customers. And they were also looking for a solution that will allow them to continue using their customized process and not have to force a tool that not have to force their system to work with their tool. They actually wanted to have a tool that will be able to work with their system. So some time ago, they started working with some other providers, and they had many challenges with that, including because there's such a heavy performance-wise database. The HANA database was actually overloaded many times, and they had many add-ons, including a WMS system and some other processing, some of the popular add-ons they have. And because of that many add-ons, the DI API was fighting over the DI API resources. For the technical people on the call might better understand this, but the way the DI API works is that every time an add-on wants to talk to the SAP database, it has to pass through the DI API. And if you have multiple databases, they might be fighting for resources and conflicting with each other. And that's why the performance was really slow. So whenever they wanted to have a quotation in Salesforce, it could take typically a 15-20 minute latency until that order will show up in SAP. And that didn't prove successful for them because the customer care team would not be able to process that order until that time has passed. And even when it did come through, it slowed down the entire system. They also had some challenges because they chose a generic provider, which is a generic integration provider, but they were not aware of the intricacies of the SAP B1 architecture, such as the way the user-defined fields or the database structure is designed and so on and so forth. So whenever they had some challenges in integration, the team didn't understand really, all they said is, well, this is how the integration works and it should work. But if somebody doesn't know the details behind the SAP architecture, it's many times difficult to solve all the problems. So I actually met some of the Safari guys back in October at the Business One conference, and we had a discussion and we decided to give it a try. So we started doing the implementation project, and we actually got to some impressive performance benchmarks. And all the custom objects in Salesforce are now totally integrated in SAP. So they had the entire order cycle and invoice cycle was totally new objects in Salesforce. It's not even available in Salesforce as a native object. And we were able to accommodate that with no development. It was all built into Alluvia's architecture. And in terms of the performance, because of the way the cloud engine is working is that the SAP component is actually very lightweight. There's only a tiny utility installed on the SAP server. So because of that, all processing happens on the cloud, and there's only very little DI API resources that we use or SAP server resources that we use. So we were able to get to an impressive performance enhancement in terms of getting the integration going. Safari actually went live a couple of days ago, and we worked for multiple weeks with the Safari team and with their Salesforce provider, and a very successful integration project. So now I'm going to move on to an actual live demonstration. And for this demonstration, we're going to show Shopify to SAP Business One. And I want to point again out the fact that I mentioned before that all of those 3 case studies that we talked about today is actually this exact same process is true for any other of the supported platforms, whether it's Amazon, eBay, or Magento, or BigCommerce. It's all the same process. So with that, I'm going to start now to share my screen. And it's going to take a moment to load. So what you see here on the screen is an actual Shopify admin backend. And I placed some test orders this morning so that I can show you the way Alluvia works. So what we're going to do now is we're going to see how a typical customer will want to have this data shown up in SAP Business One, and we want to be able to modify the way that the order shows up, the specific fields that are integrated, and so on and so forth. So this is an order that we have here on Shopify, and this is order number 1046. We have one item on this order, which is an Alluvial logo hat. As you can see, the cost is $3.50. We have a quantity of 1. And as you can see, this item is unfulfilled. So what we're going to do now is we want to see this order shows up in SAP. So I'm going to switch to my SAP remote machine. So as you can see, this order was order number 1046. This is order number 1046. So we're going to try to see that this order shows up in SAP. So here we have Alluvia, and this is the Alluvia interface. So what we have in Alluvia is, as I mentioned, this is a cloud platform. So this is a portal where you can keep track on all your templates and documents, inventory, and organizations and contacts. So the screen that you see here is the list of documents that are coming in. And as you can see, I have a lot of documents here coming from Shopify, some from Magento. So we should be looking for order number 1046. So right now you can see the last order we have is 1045. I'm going to refresh my screen, and we should have this new order coming into Alluvia now. So as you can see now, we have an order number 1046. And if we go into the details, we're going to see that status says it's ready to post because it's going to be posting to SAP now. And if we can go into the details, and we can see that the document details, this is actually the item code, Alluvia hat 1. This is the description, a quantity of 1. We don't have actually the price listed here, but if you want, you can add columns from the database to show, for example, the item price column. So now we have the item price for $3.50. And we are expecting to see all those details show up in SAP accordingly. So we're going to switch to SAP now. And we're going to move over to the last document. So as we can see now, we have an SAP document. It's document number 1046 because the PO number, the Shopify order number, is mapped to the customer ref num field. And we can see the item number, Alluvia hat 1. It's a quantity of 1 for $3.50. We have a note that we added on the order, which is test note 4. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to convert this order to a delivery document. And let's see if the status will change to fulfilled on Shopify. I'm going to add a tracking number. Let's just say it's 1Z123456. And you can see a shipping type is UPS. I'm going to add this delivery document. And we're going to move back to Shopify. But before we actually do that, I want to point out one quick note, is as you can see, the remarks section has the test note 4, which is a note from Shopify. But what about if you don't want to have it the way it's currently mapped, and you want to have, let's say, this test note 4, you want to have it in a different field. For example, I have here a UDF, which is called demo field, and I want to have this test note 4 show up in the UDF instead of the default remarks section. So we're going to make that change. Meanwhile, we're waiting for the order to be submitted to Shopify. So let's go back to Shopify for a moment. And you can see that this order is still not fulfilled yet. It says start fulfilling. I'm going to refresh my screen. Okay, it's actually not copied yet. But meanwhile, I'm going to make that change with the UDF, and let's see how that will work. So we have in Alluvia what we call templates. And each template is a pre-configured set of options and mapping configurations that are specific to a particular scenario and an environment. So here we have a couple of Shopify examples. So we're going to take the Shopify SAP B1 sales order example, and I'm going to click into the details, and I'm going to move over to the field mapping section, which is where we keep track on which field from Shopify shows up in SAP. So as you can see, I have here the delivery instructions field, which is coming from the note, is actually mapped to the comments field in SAP, which is the remarks. But I'm going to swap out this field with the user-defined field that I created. which you see here, the UDemo field. I'm going to drag and drop it into the mapping wizard. I'm going to take out the comments, and let's save it. And now any subsequent order that we now place from Shopify should have this change reflected, and it will come into the UDF. So let's now first refresh the screen, see if this order is already fulfilled. Okay, so we see that we already have a fulfillment. We have the carrier code is UPS. We have a tracking number, and it's fulfilled by Alluvia. It's one hat is fulfilled, so this order was successful. So now I'm going to quickly create a new order just to show the mapping change that we did. So let's go back to the orders. And let's create a new order. And I'm going to search for the product. And just for the sake of variety, let's make a quantity of 5. And let's put a different note. Going to be a note here. Okay, and let's create the order. Okay, so now we're going to move over to Alluvia and see if the order came in successfully. And let's refresh the screen, see if we have this new order. Okay, so we already have order number 1047 in the system. And by the way, you can now see that the previous order that we had, which is 1046, we now have it's marked as successful. And against that, we also have now a delivery, which is coming from SAP, which again is marked successful. And you can see that we have a relationship between those two documents because it's an order and a delivery. So we can expand and see the order details are attached to the delivery. So let's now move on to SAP and see how this order 1047 came over. Okay, so we see that the order actually failed. And this is actually, I want to point out that when something fails, you'll actually be able to see immediately how to rectify the situation and make it post-successful. So let's go into the details and see why the order failed. So we have a tab here on the order details that you can click on document process, which will tell you that why the specific orders failed. So if you see here, the remarks of the message is that value too long and property UDemo of document. So this is the actual DI API response. And the reason for this message is because the UDF that I created has a specific length. And the message that I created in the remarks was actually too long for this particular UDF value. So basically, but you get the idea that you're able to swap out on the fly in real time the mapping, the field mappings, and even add user-defined fields on the fly. And Alluvia will actually bring over the exact DI API messages or the failure details, so you should be able to rectify the situation. So let's say that we have this problem with values too long and you want to fix that. So all you need to do is you go to SAP and you modify the UDF length restriction, and then all you need to do is you come back to Alluvia and you change the status from failed, you change it back ready to post, and now you're good to go. It's going to try to submit again the document to SAP, and hopefully this time it's going to be successful. And this failed document will also show up on your dashboard. So as you can see now, we have a dashboard, and all the failed documents show up here. So there are actually a couple of failed documents. So we're going to view all the documents. You can see that these are all the failures, and you'll be able to rectify it from the screen directly. That's basically what I wanted to show today. I'm going to move over now to Maureen, who's going to feed any Q&A questions that you have so far, and we're going to try to answer those.
Thank you, Joel and Richard. As Joel said, we'll move on to the question and answer portion of the webcast. We have a couple questions in here already. First one, What if the mapping is not so simple as a direct copy, but needs some logic to determine the mapping?
Right, so the answer to that is we actually have, so what I showed you on the mapping is actually the most typical example, but we actually have more, like we have what we call a formula field, so you can apply certain data transformations or basic string manipulations like left, right trim, string concatenation, split a certain field in two, or even pass the data through a list of transformational values, such as converting from one value to another, and that is very true when it comes to the SAP codes are in many areas, it's actually represented in the database by code instead of the representational text. So when you might have a Shopify, a status, for example, might come in as open, closed, or fulfilled, and SAP it might be a 0, 1, or 2. So we'll need to make that conversion. So we'll pass the value through a transformation list that whenever you find the value open, change it to a 1, and whenever it's closed, change it to a 2, and so on and so forth. So you can do pretty much like extensive formulas to accommodate all your custom logic and custom field mapping.
Thank you. Next question. Do they still use the DI API, or do they use the HANA data service layer?
Okay, so Alluvia actually connects through the DI API. It's installed locally on the SAP server. So in order to, so in other words, with those customers who are thinking of SAP 9.3 SAP hosted cloud, that's not going to be compatible as of now. It's something we're working on. But as of now, we're installing it locally and using the DI API locally. And to better answer the question, we're actually not using the DI server, so no need for additional licensing. It's just a direct DI API.
Thank you. Which platforms have been the easiest to integrate with?
Okay, so that's actually a good question. If we go back to the slide that we had the list, let me pull that up. So we actually have here the list of supported platforms that we have. I can say that when it comes to heavy customizable platforms such as Magento or WooCommerce, which is usually customer hosted or totally customizable, in some cases it might be more challenging because each customer specific implementation might be totally different than another customer. But when it comes to the more API-based service, managed service types of platforms such as Shopify, BigCommerce, or even Amazon, eBay, which is kind of a marketplace, those are, I would say, we're mostly copy-paste from one customer to the next, and in most cases you can have it in a day or two.
And going back to our previous question, so how then do you improve the DI API performance like you indicated?
Right, so that's actually a good question, and that's the answer to that is the way the architecture of Alluvia is architectured. So we have been optimizing it since we started developing it, and we've run many benchmarks and tests, and we were able to very successfully communicate to the DI API only what's necessary. So we always make a connection, close the connection immediately, and we basically, if the DI API is busy, for example, the way it works is that we download a file from the Alluvia server. So that file is saved locally, like on a temporary basis. So even if the DI API is not available at the moment, it's not going to be lost. Data is not going to be lost. It's not going to be taken up resources from the server. It's just going to sit there in the queue and wait for it to be processed. So we've developed a very robust architecture how Alluvia is talking to the DI API, that it shouldn't overload your resources.
Thank you. What happens when the template can't accommodate a particular situation?
Okay, so there's actually, I would say, multiple levels of not accommodating a situation. So if it's something that you are using, for example, one of these supported platforms, in most cases, as long as your process fits within the boundaries of a transactional type of process, for example, you have a order type of process, and then you have a delivery, a shipment, an invoice, we should be able to accommodate it even if it's highly customized, because you could have like multiple workflows, multiple sequences. We can even do custom logic behind the scenes specifically for you via scripts on your specific account. That could be very easily accommodated. And in fact, the case study we mentioned before from Richard, we actually came up, it was actually the first time we had this scenario. Richard wanted us to have a down payment invoice and a payment attached to each sales order because the order came in already paid. So that was part of the 5-day implementation. It was accommodated out of the box because we support all those objects. Now, if it comes to a very highly unique and customized process, let's say if you have a Magento site and you customized a specific custom objects and it's very highly out of the boundaries of a specific transaction, then we might have to do a more deep dive into the technical requirements and get back to you whether it's doable out of the box or not. So far, we didn't have any accommodation that we were not able to accommodate any requirement.
We have another question that came in. Have you pitched your integration service to other add-on developers? For example, some WMS add-ons could benefit from optimization of the DI API.
Well, I believe that actually has to go the other way around. So if anybody wants to review the architecture, we'll be more than happy to have a discussion.
And this looks like it's our final question. How much does it actually cost?
Okay, so the way the costing works is that it's actually very simple. It's almost as simple as the implementation itself. So we have so each type of transaction has a different level of cost. So all business documents, and a business document is considered like in SAP, it's considered a marketing document. So any transactional type of document, whether it's an order, invoice, purchase order, delivery note, is basically included with a $99 subscription fee per month. And once you pay that $99, it includes up to 1,000 transactions per month. It's regardless of the number of connections you have, whether you have 10 documents coming from Amazon and 200 documents coming from your Shopify website and some Salesforce quotes. They're all part of the $99 fee, and it includes up to 1,000 transactions. If you move beyond that, it's going to be $39 more for an additional chunk of another 1,000. When it comes to inventory synchronization and business partner synchronization, it's inventory synchronization, which includes item catalog synchronizing and inventory quantity updates and pricing updates, is $79 per month per connection. So if you want to have your inventory updated on Amazon as well as on Walmart, it's going to be $79 times 2. And for business partners, so if you have a Salesforce implementation and you want to have your business partners and contacts synchronized with Salesforce, it's going to be $39 per connection. So for the business documents, it's once per account. For inventory and business partners, it's $39 and $79 per connection. And that's basically it. There's never any, we have a $99 setup fee per template. So if you have and that's only a one-time single fee. But other than that, there's never any additional licensing requirements or consulting fees or third-party services required.
Wonderful. That looks like that was the last question for our Q&A. So I'll hand it back over to you, Joel, just for closing remarks.
Perfect. So So I basically, as I'm just going to summarize it again, it's really a revolutionary approach to the way we do integration, and looking forward to reaching out. Anybody has any additional questions, you can always contact me at joel@alluviaplatform.com, or you can call us, as you see on the slide, 877-610-2052. You can also look for us on Twitter or LinkedIn, and we'll be more than happy to reach out to you after the presentation to follow up on any additional questions that any of the attendees might have.
Thank you, Joel and Richard, for a great OneSource webcast. On behalf of ASUG, I'd like to thank Alluvia, as well as all of you who took the time out of today to attend this webcast. The recording and slides from today's program will be posted to the ASUG website, and all registrants will receive an email with a link to those materials. With that, I'd like to close today's webcast. Have a great day, everyone.